Right about y'all every time that dang old dog crossed these start yapping at y'all 24 hours a day and nobody answered you.
I cannot understand a single word you're saying.
The primary goal of public speaking is to either inform, persuade, or entertain your audience. But it's nearly impossible to do that if you cannot be understood due to unclear communication. My name is Beverly, world champion of public speaking, your public speaking mentor, and in this video, we are going to cover 7 tips on how you can communicate more clearly. Tip number 1 is to slower your speaking rate. The problem with a lot of speakers is that they talk too quickly whenever they give a speech. When you speak too fast, it's harder for your audience to follow what you're saying, especially if English is not their native language. Also, when you speak too quickly, you increase the chances of you stumbling over your words. Therefore, it is wiser to slow down your speaking rate whenever you are giving your speech to an audience. So to practice executing this tip, here's what you can do. Record yourself giving your presentation at your normal speaking rate. It doesn't matter if it's on an audio recording or a video recording, just make sure that you are getting it down and that you are getting the timing for your speech. Because once you have the timing, you're going to then take that same presentation or that same segment of your presentation, and then you're going to give the talk again. But this time, you're going to take more time to finish this speech. You can set a target of 10%, 15%, 20%. It doesn't matter as long as you just slow down your speaking rate and take a little bit longer to finish the talk. You can make adjustments as needed, but you should be able to tell the difference in your speaking rate as you watch the recordings. Whatever feels more natural to you is what you can stick with. Now, there actually is a faster way that I've discovered that can help you slow down your speaking rate and help you speak more clearly at the same time, but we'll get to that later in the video. Tip number 2, avoid cliches and vague phrases. A cliche is a phrase that is used so widely that it becomes an unoriginal expression. And you probably use these cliches without even thinking about it. For example, cat got your tongue? A diamond in the rough. The people are up in arms. Fit as a fiddle. The problem with cliches is that they've been used so much that the benefit of their analogies has been lost. For example, without looking it up, can you tell me what makes a fiddle fit? I would guess that 99% of you do not know the answer to this. And the 1% that do probably looked it up before. Another problem with cliches is that they tend to be colloquial, meaning that they're going to be used by certain regions and not be universal. What's understood in America may not be understood in China. What's understood in China may not be understood in Australia. What's understood in Australia may not be understood in the UK. This may result in that cliche phrase that you use not clearly explaining what it is you intended to actually say. So the simple solution is to avoid the cliche phrases altogether and take the time to say what it is you truly want to say. Instead of saying something like, a cat must have his tongue, say instead, he's being more quiet than usual. Instead of claiming that she's a diamond in the rough, just say that she has potential that a lot of people don't notice. Instead of saying people are up in arms, just say the people are very angry. Do this whenever you find yourself using an overused cliche or commonly used phrase. Also, you can get a friend or a colleague to review your talk and go over any cliches that you may be using unknowingly. This will help you better ensure that what you say doesn't get lost in translation. Now, these next few tips can help you with your articulation by focusing on better enunciation. The first one of these tips is tip number 3. Be sure to enunciate the ending of the words that you say. In the English language, there are a lot of words that are very similar in sound to other words. And what separates them is only a slightly different sound at the end. For instance, there is a difference between the word and the word and. You can say catch that fly, or you can say catch that flight. You can say Wi-Fi, or you can ask the question, why fight? You want to clearly say the ending of certain words because if you mumble or if you don't enunciate clearly, the context of what you say is going to completely change. And more about context later in the video. In addition, clearly enunciating your words can be the difference between being grammatically correct or grammatically incorrect. As a native English speaker, I have found this to be most prominent when we are using words that indicate the past or the present. For instance, watched is past tense, while watch or watches are present tense. Turned is past tense, while turn and turns are present tense. You should be mindful of how you say the ending of these words because if you say them incorrectly, you could be written up by the grammar police. Speaking of grammar police, one communication quirk that drives them absolutely crazy is when you drop the ing sound. Now this one is more difficult for me because I do it all of the time when I speak more casually. Casually, I don't say I'm talking to someone, I say I'm talking to someone. I don't say I'm walking down the street, I say I'm walking down the street.
Hey, I'm walking here.
Now the ing sounds I don't think are as problematic as other sounds, But when you are speaking in a more academic setting, or if you are in a contest that judges on grammar, you may want to pay special attention to those ending sounds. But the question is, how can you make it easier to enunciate these sounds? Tip number 4, speak through a smile or through bared teeth. Now, I'm not telling you to go around on stage looking like the Joker. Don't force the smile to the point where you feel tension in your face. You just want to have a small, natural smile as you are speaking. The benefits of smiling are that it, 1, naturally makes you feel better. 2, smiling makes you seem more charismatic and likable. And I've even found that smiling allows me to enunciate more clearly, at least in the English language. It may only be a slight difference, but you can hear the enunciation gets a little bit more clear. And I have a theory as to why. I believe when you smile as you speak, your mouth opens up wider, which then allows your tongue to move about your mouth more freely. Also, when you smile, it becomes more difficult for your lips to block the sound out of your mouth. When the lips block the sound that's coming out of your mouth, this is known as mumbling. In addition, I think the act of focusing on smiling as you speak subconsciously forces you to slower your speaking rate. That slower rate then allows your brain and your mouth to synchronize better, and you're able to form your words more easily without using any of those dreaded clutch words or stumbling over your words. These 3 factors make it easier for you to be understood. However, you may be asking, what do you do if you don't want to portray happiness as you're speaking? After all, you don't want to look happy when you're about to tell somebody that they're about to be laid off. Well, this is why I specify and say bare your teeth instead of necessarily say smiling all the time. You can bare your teeth while portraying other emotions. You just have to make sure to utilize your other facial expressions like your eyes to get across the right emotion. However, if that proves to be too challenging for you, just make sure that you apply the principles that we talked about. Open your mouth wide enough for your tongue to move freely, prevent your lips from blocking your mouth and mumbling, and slow down your speaking rate. Tip number 5. Be aware of T and D sounds in the middle of certain words. In casual American English, we tend to muddy up the sound between D and T. For example, instead of saying little, we say little. Instead of saying water, we say water. And if you live in Philadelphia, my hometown, we tend to say water instead of water. Now, other than the aforementioned grammar please, these slight mispronunciations should not give you much of a problem when it comes to being understood. However, you do have to again be careful with words that have similar sounds. For example, the word writing, as in writing a book, when casually spoken in American English, it can sound like riding a horse. So if I were to casually say that I was writing before riding my horse, that may leave some people confused. So in addition to paying more attention and enunciating these words, I also have tips number 6 and 7. Tip number 6 is to make sure that your context is clear. The primary goal of communication is to be understood so that you can get a proper reply back. And there may be times when you're not able to find the right words or you're not able to clearly enunciate the word. But in those instances, you have to remember that context is also used in communication. And even though it may not seem like it all of the time, most people are fairly intelligent. So if they have the proper context to what you're explaining, then you may still be fine. Let's reuse my example from before. If I were to say I was riding before riding my horse, then again, that is going to be confusing. However, even without clearly enunciating the words, if I were to say I was writing in my journal before riding on my horse, then that becomes a lot more clear because you have the context clues to tell you what I mean. Context can provide more clarity to what you are trying to say. And then we have tip number 7, which is to avoid the words that you struggle too much with pronouncing. When you find that there is one word that you just can't pronounce correctly, just try to find a different word or an expression that is easier for you to say. And this isn't just for people who speak English as a second language. Even I, as a primary English speaker, do this too. For instance, in most of my speeches and talks, you will never hear me say the word water or water because I can't pronounce it correctly. So instead, to get around that, I would say that I'm drinking some type of juice or that I'm just getting a drink. Or if I want to be funny and very scientifically specific, I'll say I'm getting me a nice tall glass of H2O.
And that's what I call high quality H2O.
Go online to thesaurus.com and find out if there are any other words or expressions that mean the same thing to what you're trying to say that linguistically are easier for you to say.